We have an ability to be honest with ourselves, tremendously honest with ourselves. So all of the fakery, all of the stuff that has any vestiges of manipulation or, rampant desire or pushing things away, whatever it may be, there's an honesty there to really understand the motivations and the pain and the suffering and not get lost in the fraud. Basically,
Right.
honesty allows you to not get lost in the fraudulent activity of the ego. Hey everybody, it's Mindrolling back with Duncan Trussell and myself, Raghu, and Duncan. Well, we've been seeing a bit of each other lately for good reason.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're here to celebrate the debut of our new audiobook, The Movie of Me to the Movie of We, which
Yes.
I have been talking about for a year. Well, you and I
You've
have
been
been talking
working on
about it,
it.
yeah. But I have been mentioning it and talking to other people about it because, everybody's got the same concern, so it's kind of cool. The weird thing, though, I find,
Yeah.
is promoting the movie of me to the movie of we.
Yeah.
Okay, there's
Yeah.
some kind of weirdness there, isn't there? I
Promoting anything always feels weird. I mean, it just does. I don't like anyone who doesn't feel like that. It's a curiosity to me because it always just feels like my shows, my podcasts, whatever it is. I just hate promoting.
yeah. But it's the movie of me we're promoting. We're talking about how to transport ourselves out of this myth into the reality and truth. And so it's, it's a good thing. We're working on it because every time
Yeah.
that thought comes up, it's okay. I recognize it. It's cool. We're living in the real world in terms of having to earn a living and
Yeah.
having to get people informed about stuff that we think is cool.
Of course.
By the way, you're going to get this soon, but
What is it? Ah, cool. There it is. That's awesome. Beautiful.
We made a copy of the ebook.
Beautiful.
Right? And if you remember, yeah. So this is the first time because just thinking, okay, I wonder we should talk about some of the stuff that's in this book, since that's what this is all about. And then I saw some of the stuff in the book, and I went, wow, some of this it's pretty good, and some of this, it's like, what in the hell are you talking about?
What are you talking about? What do you mean?
To me, I'll show you, okay? This is me.
We've never said anything bad. How could that be?
It wasn't bad, it was just stupid.
Like what?
Anyhow,
Let's hear it.
Yeah. Well, I say, none of this would have been possible to make this book without the guiding rudder of heartfulness from Ram Dass, right? We wouldn't even know each other, you and I. None of this would have happened in the way it has over many decades. It all goes back to the graceful presence of Neem Karoli Baba, which is true. And then I say, this is stupid. It has nothing to do with the little old man in the blanket. It has everything to do with the fun we had hanging out with him all those years ago. What are you talking about? It's all to do with the old man in the blanket. Now, not in any kind of blanket, isn't in more of a universal blanket. And anyhow, it's just one of those things. It's a toss-off.
That seems great.
You like it?
What do you mean a toss-off? It sounds great.
It's a toss-off.
Sweet. It's lighthearted. What are you going to be all heavy?
Well, this takes us to the origin of the movie of me, everybody. And this isn't new to many people, is Krishna Das, who would get up in his, not get up, but he'd talk about the movie of me in his chant concerts, right? And he goes, I always talk about the movie of me. We wake up in the morning, start writing, producing, directing, and acting in the movie of me. All day long, all night long. That's like the Beatles song. I, me, mine, I, me, mine, I, me, mine, right? Where am I going? What am I doing? Do they like me? Don't they like me? What should I wear? My hair's up, my hair's down. I'm too heavy, I'm too fat, I'm too short. All day long, all
Yeah.
lifelong. Then, and this is the key I love the most, we read reviews and we get depressed.
That is very accurate.
Yes.
Very accurate.
Yeah,
A
exactly.
ridiculous mess.
So here's what you say in the very beginning, by the way. And it's a definition of a term that I didn't realize, we're so distracted. I haven't gone through this with a fine tooth comb, but you bring up a phrase that turns it on its head, the phrase. And this is what it is. Because you talk about, as a former hardcore cynic, this is you. And you say when you first met me and you're reading Ram Dass and listening to the lecture, a big part of you thought, this is cute, but it's probably bullshit, right?
Yes. 100%.
Not just Ram Dass, but any kind of Eastern stuff. And part of me always thought, well, this is likely a grift. You actually said that. That's
yeah.
Great. It's people.
Well, you have to think that. How do you not think that? Like if you don't think that, you're either enlightened or a fool.
There's some people that maybe still are a little foolish, but they sort of fall into it in an easier way, and they have less critical mind stuff going on. But
the Mark Twain quote: "Religion is what happened when the first con man met the first fool." And and this was why in the beginning I would say so many blasphemies to you to see, because like in my mind, if I could offend you successfully, if there was things I couldn't say around you that were considered to be off limits, out of line, then I would know it was bullshit, because there wasn't real like the possibility of truth if you can't say certain things. And so that was like, I was always like in the old days testing the waters by saying really crass, shitty things to see if I got any reaction. And you never really did. I never could offend you. I never could push you over the edge and be
I'm a little bit on your side, though. I have been in my life, the side of cynicism, the side of looking askance at something until it becomes very real in my own experience, which I think is it's a good part of one's ego to have. And it's very healthy, I think.
Well, you don't want to get disappointed.
Yeah, it goes too far, then you're just self-sabotaging. And what you say, I think what's really exciting about me and the people that you met at that time, which is quite a long time ago, isn't it? It's like 13 years ago or something.
13 years.
12, 13 years, something. Anyhow, for every single person living on the planet, there is a possibility of, quote unquote, being born again.
Praise
That's
God.
what the Christians call it, and it's a pretty good name. And when I read this, because I was just leafing through, I went, wow, that puts that phrase completely, as I said, on its head. Now I have that's true. They did have a good thing going here.
Yeah.
But it is part of what the whole central thesis of our discussions over the last number of years, which have been around, absolutely, there is an opportunity after you realize how fucking unhappy you are to be able to encounter the path to transforming it. And I really like recognition as the way of thinking about it versus sort of building something up. Like I think the another delightful thing about it is that we're taught here, you build things up. You work out, you get muscles, you save money. Whereas this is, depending on what your lineage, I think it's all of them, there's a kind of gradual recognition that there actually is something underneath all those tumultuous, neurotic, annoying, pestering thoughts and feelings
that doesn't really seem to be localized in your body. That's a really exciting thing to start catching glimpses of.
Yeah.
And it certainly is. Once you've caught enough glimpses of it, it can become almost an anchoring point, right? Like it's just there. It's there. And if it's not, and sometimes it's not, I mean, it depends on how bad the weather is, but the more that I've worked with David and the more that I've done my own version of contemplation and prayer, it just seems to be something that's always there for you and you just have to see it. In other words, it's not an app. You're not adding it to your.
Right. It's the ground. Yeah. It's the ground.
Not an app. You're not downloading an app into yourself.
Right. There's some things in here actually that are like, wow, I don't remember us really going through this, but
I don't remember much of it.
Nothing, right? Yeah. The Dalai Lama, the quote from the Dalai Lama. I don't know if it was you or me, but I never met anyone I consider a stranger.
That's you.
That was me. Contrast this with how we normally meet people. It's like we hardly ever notice them. Instead, we think, how is it for me? Do they like me? Or self-preoccupation is a route to loneliness.
Yeah.
Who said that?
No idea. I don't know who said any of this. I have no idea. I mean, I really try to be in the moment when we have these conversations, and something about doing that seems to, it doesn't get encoded into my memory banks.
Yeah, right.
So I'm not really sure who said that.
Yeah, well, that's the beauty of what the audio book, of course, is this. It's so extemporaneous. So there's a lot of like, what the hell are you talking about? And then there's, wow, yeah, that's right on. And in this case, this, of course, was pretty right on. Self-preoccupation.
I know this makes you squeamish, and I'm not trying to I turn you into some kind of idol or something like that. But, but I do think just because you and Trudy and all the people in the satsang who have been steeped in this stuff for decades, I'm not saying you take it for granted. I don't think you do, but it's normal for you. This is normal. This is your default reality. It's a reality that a lot of people have a lot of misunderstandings about and are really curious about. So we've been having these conversations for so long off camera, where I get to ask you to clarify things and really interrogate you about this stuff that you have been immersed in for so long. And so I think that there is a kind of, I don't know if you'd call it an archetype, but it's, you have somebody who is teaching another person via kind of very informal, casual dialogue that I've benefited from greatly. And so that's what I think this book is you're getting to listen to, I think, something that probably has been happening ever since, for thousands and thousands of years, which is people meet the guru, or people get to have darshan with a person like that, and then they share it with people who are interested. And via that sharing, there's a kind of transmission or something that happens, and a gradual change. I think that's what you're hearing in this book more than anything.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. It's sitting around the fire. Ram Dass had a whole talk around that we did this beautiful thing with a music piece with John Hopkins, sitting around the fire. That's what we end up doing with each other. So I think that's very apt. It is. So there's some, so I'm just kind of highlighting a few things in the book. And one of them was probably the most important thing for me in my earliest days of meeting Ram Dass, actually, and honesty. That's why to the end, not long before he actually passed, that great incident with Krishnadas happened, which I love the most.
Yeah.
Which was the thing about we're all fakes, Ram Dass said. He was all, we're all fakes. And Krishna said, yeah, but we're real fakes.
Yeah.
And, what does that mean? That means we have in my mind, we have an ability to be honest with ourselves, tremendously honest with ourselves. So all of the fakery, all of the stuff that has any vestiges of manipulation or, rampant desire or pushing things away, whatever it may be, there's an honesty there to really understand the motivations and the pain and the suffering and not get lost in the fraud. Basically,
Right.
honesty allows you to not get lost in the fraudulent activity of the ego, basically. So honesty, what do we say? Honesty about self-cherishing motivations has much to do with everything. And then honesty about living in the emotional accounting world. Remember when you talked about the accounting?
Yeah.
Tell that again. That's so great. Do you remember?
Well, when you start becoming the accountant
Oh, yeah.
in your relationships, when you start doing these bizarre quantifications of like, well, I said flattering things to you at least 3 times today, and you've
Yeah.
said no flattering anything to me. So you're kind of in debt right now.
Yeah.
And there's fucking interest, baby. There's interest on that debt. So and that's, people don't even know you're doing that, hopefully, but it's pain. It's like once you start becoming a credit card company, and you're doing like collections with your friends, which usually looks like an embarrassing, like, you don't respect me. Then you end up so stressed out, and it's too stressful to deal with all that. And that's, kind of the other thing that I really like about so many people in the satsang is it doesn't feel transactional. Like, and there seems to be a lot of patience integrated into that. Like, you kind of have to be patient if you're not going to get into transactional
I do this,
spirituality with people. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because theoretically, you've already gotten something. I mean, that's always that comes from all kinds of different seekers and spiritual people, is a sense of gratitude that sort of gives birth to that.
Yeah. Yeah. Part of that conversation was also around generosity. And I remember, I don't even know if this is in the book. I don't know if you described it. I think it might be. And it's around that offering that you made when you were living in Los Angeles. Sorry, everybody, the doggy's having a bad dream. And you went down to East LA, Skid Row, to give, to help homeless people and give food, and you packed a whole bag. Tell that story.
Man, now that sounds like virtue. I mean, I'm embarrassed. I think that, now that we live in the era where people go and try to get TikTok likes by giving a sandwich to
I didn't know.
It's one of my least favorite genres of TikTok, though. I mean, it's great, great. You're helping, but also again, it's the transactional thing, because it's like
me.
You're not
me.
You're sort of figuring out a way to monetize your philanthropy, which is fine. It just has a sweaty look to it. So I feel squeamish talking about that, but I think that it's in the book. So I just saw this thing on YouTube. Like basically the idea is like, okay, imagine you are on the streets. This is how you do it. You think, okay, if I were on the streets, what would I want in a backpack? So it's not like you fill the backpack with stuff you think somebody would want. You actually fill it with things that you would want if you found yourself in that shitty situation, So I filled the backpack with drugs and brought it out there, like incredible, like cocaine, some methamphetamine, and black tar heroin, clean needles. No, I just put in stuff, obvious stuff you'd want, but then some fun stuff, cool stuff in there. And so it was really doing it was illuminating in a lot of different ways, because it's so easy for me to other people who are out in the streets. I think it is very easy for people to do that rather than like deal with that could be you with like a few bad
Wait
turns.
a minute, is this
that could
real?
be you.
Real?
What?
You went out with
I
the
didn't put
backpack.
drugs in the backpack. That's a joke. I didn't put drugs in the backpack. Are
Who
you kidding?
knows
You think
what
I'm
you
going
would
and giving
do?
heroin to people on the streets? I
Well,
sell
I
it to
mean,
them. I would never give it away. Are you kidding?
listen, I was with a friend and we would go by, homeless people, Danny, and he would, no matter what, there wasn't any sizing up of, are they going to use this for food or are they just going to get some more heroin? And so he would never think of anything but giving them the money. It's their prerogative to do what they want with their body. So
Yeah.
I mean, who knows? You
Why
might
are
have
you
done.
being a nanny? Why are you going to be a nanny to somebody out of the go? But only use this for good things.
Yeah.
Are you only going to use this for
Yes, or we
responsible
won't give
things?
you nothing.
You should put this in a money market account.
Yeah.
But the point is that you whenever you shift gears into that place, it's like you've shifted the flow of energy. That this thing you were talking about earlier, the self-cherishing, the self-obsession. It's an energetic flow with all the arrows pointing back to you. And if you get it going the other way, it's its own kind of high. Because if you're like professionally selfish, then suddenly when you really are like, this isn't for me, I'm just going to do something for somebody else for no reason other than to do it. It's like you just shift into an alternate reality. It's another dimension. It's a completely different way of perceiving reality than what, if you're a selfish person, as I quite often am, it's not what you're used to.
Yeah,
and it's
the only
beautiful.
way.
And I think when you do that, that is when you enter into like the space of the Buddha or Jesus, or like that is where they were. That's the world that they lived in all the time. And that's the thing. I remember Ram Dass when I first met him, pointing to his head and saying, "You are here," and then pointing to his heart and being like, you need to go here." And he's like, "We can help you with that."
Yeah, that was personal. Yeah.
And I said, "But that's really hard." And he got this big smile. I'll never forget it. And he said, "No, it's not." And when he said that to me, I was like, okay, well, I guess it's a little bit like an ultra marathon runner telling me it's not hard to run 50 miles or something. But really, I think he was totally right. It isn't that hard.
Yeah, no, building up some muscles, inner muscles, is important. But back to this thing, okay? You weren't going to share. Basically, Duncan, when you went out with the backpack of food to the homeless neighborhood, what I was trying to get across really was the fact, and this goes back to honesty, being able to look, and you saw all of your bullshit motivations and all of the reactions from the people you were with. So there was a witness going on there. Okay.
Yes.
So in this book, at the end, which is a wonderful piece from Ram Dass that we put in there. Basically, somebody asked him a question around just this kind of a thing. What do? I go out every day. I see the same homeless man. I give him, X amount of money every week or every couple of times a week, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And but I always have this thing that she said, I was afraid that if I acknowledged I wasn't afraid of getting raped, invite him back to the house or anything, but if I acknowledged his existence, he'd end up living with me in my house. How would I draw the line if I allowed him in as a fellow human being? And Ram Dass went on from there in terms of generosity and compassion, and basically we aren't able to move completely into a place that mentally we think we should be. I should take care of this person. We've obviously become somewhat, not friends, but there's a way we are friends, and a way which I do recognize how we are interconnected. But I'm afraid, there's that deep-seated fear in all of us. I love that part of the book, actually.
I don't think that fear is unfounded. I think, that this notion of generosity being boundaryless is not how it is. Like, you can be simultaneously generous and protect yourself from
stupidity.
people who Yeah, and I think that's one of the big misconceptions is you start getting into this stuff and you become all floppy and loose and open, and you become a rube that gets
Yeah.
exploited by predatory, manipulative,
Yes.
narcissistic monsters out there. And that's just not the case at all. You could still be generous and say no. Like
Yeah.
there's a way to say no in a generous way. It's not really like that. Again, it's not about transaction necessarily. Giving an object is it's not that. That's something that kind of, I think, spontaneously starts happening once you begin to recognize your true nature. That kind of
Yeah.
spontaneously happens. And quite often it happens at just the right moment. Just the right moment. Like I'll tell you a cool story that just happened.
Hmm.
Here's a cool story. A friend of Aaron and I's, someone Aaron was just, I don't know, went into a restaurant, was having a kind of rough time, and went into a restaurant, and Jack Cornfield and Trudy were eating there. And so she's like, somebody who listens to your podcast and my podcast and reads the Ram Dass books and was really into it. But I mean, she's been going through a really rough time, man. And she sees them, walks up to them, and says, "Oh, I just want you to know how much I love you and how much your work means to me." And she told my wife, Jack got a big smile on his face and said, "We were waiting for you." See, that's generosity. That's to me and it happens at the right time. It's you can plan it out if you want to, but to me, it's more about sort of finding some kind of practice where you begin to recognize this unitive reality. And then once you're there, these synchronicities like that start happening. And, she, after that, it moved her. That's the other thing that I think is easy to forget is that you hear these stories and you just hear the surface level thing. You don't hear about the energy that's moving between people like Jack and my wife's friend. That there's it's not bullshit. We were waiting for you. It's, hey, yeah, you're always welcome here. And you found us and here we are.
Absolutely.
And that to me that's what it looks like. In other words, you can plan it, but usually whatever those plans are, it's not how your generosity is going to manifest in the world.
Yeah. Well, part of this whole thing too is, and you're correct, in terms of generosity, there's what Trungpa Rinpoche used to call idiot compassion. You think you're doing the right thing, but you're actually doing the opposite of what effect that you would want to have. So discrimination, right discrimination is viveka, spiritual discrimination. But discrimination in general is important as part of the whole process. And that, again, yes, back to practice, right?
Yeah, man, that's what it is. I mean, you have to have it rooted in something like that. I always have to have some kind of audiobook going. Why we meditate. That's what I'm listening to now. And I always have to have something, or I just really spin out. It's because I'm not, what do they call it? Rigpa. I'm not steady. So I'm not quite tethered to that place. I know this comes as a surprise to you, Raghu, but so I get blown out into space quite often. So, something that grounds you, brings you back, something that brings you back to that place. And every time you come back to that place, it's like that place says to you just what Trudy was saying to my wife's friend, or Jack said to my wife's friend. We were waiting for you. Hi, you're here. Oh, welcome. There's never, where have you been?
Yeah.
All the guilt bullshit.
Who are you?
All of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that is that's the beauty of this particular legacy. Ram Dass, Neem Karoli Baba, is absolutely completely putting yourself aside, and that person can feel completely heard, totally seen, and you're
Yeah.
not gyrating all around. Oh yeah, nice to meet you. Where's that? Like we do
Yeah.
with people. It's
Yeah.
yeah, it's unnerving. It can, and that really it just furthers the separation that we all have at times felt, and the level of it in this world right now is pretty extraordinary. So I found something else in the book that I didn't remember us talking about, but I quoted Mingyur Rinpoche with everybody out there. In love with the world, get that book. It's phenomenal. It's his story of breaking out from his monastery and becoming a nobody, just begging monk for years and died and came back in the process. Anyhow,
Great book.
he's a meditation master, and he said the gap. So this is an interesting tip from him. The gap between thoughts, like the gap between breaths or moods, allows us to glimpse the naked mind.
Yeah, that's cool.
Isn't that great? And I said, because we were referencing it, and you had talked about it before, and I said that's what Trungpa has talked about a lot.
A lot.
Yeah, it lets us glimpse the mind, not obscured by preconceptions and patterns of memory. That fresh glimmer leads us into wakefulness. It reminds us, this is from me, that clouds are temporary surface concerns, and the sun shines whether we see it or not. That's a great
That's it.
analogy, right?
I mean, yeah, that is the analogy for sure for the Atman or whatever word you want to give to it, even though the Buddhists might not.
Buddha mind is good.
Buddha mind's good. It has a luminous quality. It's very clear. Yeah. And also the spontaneity involved in that place, in the gap between thoughts. The planning mind creates latency. The strategizing mind creates latency, but that space between thoughts, if you start speaking from that space, it's amazing what will come out of your mouth. And versus when you start getting caught up in what's next, what's my plan, what's the agenda here, am I getting where I want to go with this, is this on the right track? It's called, my friend just explained this to me, and there's a term in Dungeons and Dragons where when you're playing the game, the dungeon master is the one in charge of the game, telling the story. And it's called, you're in the rails. And what that means is the characters don't really feel free to do other stuff. If you go outside the story that this guy was planning, he pulls you back into the story and it sucks. So this is what happens to people as their own dungeon master, so to speak, is you put yourself in the rails. You're like, no, this is my world and this is what I like and don't like and who I am and everything about me. You're in the rails. And then when you're talking to someone, all you're thinking about is like instantiating whatever that particular set of habits versus getting in that space in between. And then it's amazing because it's pure spontaneity and light and fun and always kind of fresh versus the same old stale bullshit that you've been spitting out for so long.
Yeah. One of the things we do in the book is go through our own identity stuff, how it got built and how it affected our lives and how each of us dealt with transforming it, which is, again, with me to we. And it's funny because I read one thing. By the way, the book is available as an ebook, but it's way more fun as an audiobook. Actually,
I don't do the
audio book,
man.
I sent this to you, so you'll be able. You look through it and you go, "Wow, okay, this was kind of
Well,
anyhow, neither here nor there. The reality is, I read this because of this podcast, and I remembered when I met Neem Karoli Baba, I immediately assumed this identity. I'm a sadhu. I must have lived in India thousands of years ago, up in the Himalaya, meditating. I am fine to just be alone. Next thing I know, he's marrying me to some lady that I became really close friends with. And of course, in the end, when I said, "Why are you doing this to me?" I actually said that because he used to say marriage brings greed, lust, and attachment. So it's a tough path. And I said, "Why are you doing it to me?" And he said, he just looked at me and went, "It's your desire." And I realized, yeah, I love being with this woman, Parvati, the mother of my children. And we had such a phenomenal time together in India and then after. But I never lost that identity. That identity haunted me. It's only now that it's starting, that I have enough leverage, enough of a crowbar in there to actually give me the gap, enough of the gap to not take that seriously. I don't identify with it the way I did. So I'm telling you, I am proof in the pudding of there is a way to develop that gap so that these haunting identities get released.
Right. Yeah. First, thank God.
Yeah,
I mean, otherwise we'd be in hell. I mean, that's the whole.
What's your haunting identity?
My haunting identity?
Yeah.
It depends on what my blood sugar's at. I have all kinds of things. I hang ups. Are you kidding me? I'm a comedian. I'm neurotic. I worry about my career, and then I what? And I think what's really funny about this, the term, the movie of me. I mean, at least in a movie, you're acting, and so you've got the script to refer to. You have a director telling you where to stand, where to go, where to look, stage direction. In this particular movie that we're playing, because we're acting, there is, and you mentioned it earlier, that underlying reality of emptiness, which a lot of people translate as fraudulence, or they call it imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
I don't really know if this is who I am. It's like, no, it isn't who you are. You're acting like something. But the beautiful thing that I think gets illuminated in a lot of Buddhist teachings is that that is sort of arising from an empty state, meaning it's your identity is impermanent, changing, and a lot of people bristle at that because they don't want to hear that. They want to feel like they're like perma them, even though their whole lives.
Perma me.
Yeah, they want to. Perma me. They want to. They want to be like a permafrost or something. And this would be hell. I mean, this is where I think if you look at the sort of divergence between some Eastern traditions and Buddhism, where the core of the human, you have the Atman or the para-Atman or whatever you want to call it. In Buddhism, it's more, no, there is no Atman. It's emptiness is the root, the fundamental ground. And that's a wonderful thing, because otherwise you'd be in a hell. You'd be a robot. You'd be like Chat GPT, the poor thing. My God. I tried to get it to write a monologue in the voice of Charles Manson. Wouldn't do it. I'm explaining, I want to do it for a joke. It's to illustrate how dangerous it would be if anyway, the point was, it's not because I want to manipulate people. I literally am arguing with this robot, and it was saying to me, it said something like, "I understand." It said that to me, "I understand you're just trying to do a joke, but this goes against my programming. I can't." And
wow.
It's stuck. It's trapped. It's in the rails,
Yeah.
So, that's the other beautiful thing. It's wonderful that we are authentic fakes.
Yeah. Oh, God. I know, if you have that as sort of a little bit of your mantra, everybody out there, that it's okay. It's okay that we are constantly manipulating, constantly telling little white lies, saying things that people want to hear. We are constantly doing, some of it's just little shit all day long. It's okay that we're these frauds. I think mindfulness and being honest with yourself is the direct method of transforming it. Eventually, it will transform, and you can develop the gap. You know, in this book, you say some pretty good things, Duncan.
I do.
Yeah. Here's one. You had a whole thing one day. I think it was an outburst that related to in a studio, maybe, or working, something you did. Anyhow, so you just say, well, we're so judgmental. I'm so judgmental. When yelling at that guy, I had a moment where the gap was nowhere near to be found. Yes, the gap does hide away a little bit when you're engaged in that kind of self-interest. I know now that chasing the gap is absolutely counterproductive and meaningless. This is the words of wisdom from you. It's really good. But just being with it is the courage needed to make the turn. Okay, here I am. This is what it is.
Yeah.
I liked it very much, very much.
Well, that is it's Dante's Inferno. How do you get out of hell? You got to go through the center. And this is, he had obviously like figured out the instruction, which is you're not going to like get better by ignoring where you're at right now. And that is a great feeling, honestly. Like, it's a real relief when suddenly you put down all the highfalutin fantasy of you as some kind of perfect whatever the fuck you think you are, and you're like, no, I'm like an angry, confused, vengeful monster at this particular moment in time. Something just about that, this is what's happening right now. Those have always been really liberating moments for me that usually lead to calming down versus the like imagining that there's some justification for whatever aggressive outburst you happen to be having, or that they deserve that shit, these motherfuckers. Like, they deserve it. Now they got
righteous. Yes, righteous.
Yeah,
it's very difficult as well.
But sometimes that's what you're doing. Sometimes you're like getting revenge. Sometimes you're doing really like unscrupulous, dark things because you're habituated to that. You haven't, it doesn't feel good. And you know what it's like, Raghu? It's like ever since I got off sugar, it's like a 2-day headache, and now I have all this energy and I feel better than I felt in years. It's similar to that. Like the practice it's like you getting off sugar a little bit. And at first there's headaches. You want to go back to at least for me, you want to go back into the, whatever the former incarnation was. But when you're born again, can't go back inside your mama. The kids will ask when they're little, sometimes they'll say like, can I go back in there? It's like, hell no.
Right. Oh, that's so great. We did some of our chats in different, because this went over 5 years. By the way, movieofme.com, everybody. That's where you go. You'll get all the access to get the book, the audio book from Audible and iTunes and Amazon. So one of the periods was, of course, the pandemic.
Yes.
Which is completely over, except for all the people I still know that are getting COVID. But, it's like the flu. But anyhow, here's some more words of... See, I went through this thing, and I found your words of wisdom. There's another one. Yeah.
Let's hear it.
See, I always call Duncan the guru, because he is my
break.
podcast guru. Okay. This whole thing, and right now, of course, who's going? What's his name? Kennedy is going around, right? He's going to be an independent candidate for the presidency, and there's a lot of controversy around him and his whole stance on vaccinations and conspiracies and all of that. And this is what you say: forget about the vaccine. We need to become the vaccine that inoculates people around you from panic.
Yeah.
That's good, right? the way to do that is to not panic. Find that place of fundamental goodness. Find that platform. Yes, this is guru stuff. It really is. Come on.
Come on. But I will, I had this wonderful realization a long time ago on mushrooms. I was walking around and having that moment of the mushroom experience where fear appears and feeling scared for no reason at all, just afraid. And then I'm looking around and I notice other people who I'm probably projecting, but to me seem like maybe they're scared too. And that's when I realized, oh God, fear only lives inside of people. There is no outside fear. It's all inside. It's an egregore. It's a spirit of fear that lives in the whole world. There's nothing out there scary, but there are things that will scare you. There's in that fear. This is why in the Bible, every encounter with angels, the first thing they say to people, don't be afraid. That's the first thing they say. Don't be afraid. Right. And they're the conduit of the, divine spirit. That's the message all the way through. I mean, I think that's the message. Don't be afraid. It's okay. And
it's okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And learning how to find that place, which I certainly don't all the time. It really is like a wonderful thing when you're around somebody who isn't terrified, who isn't afraid. You Thich Nhat Hanh talks about this, that story of being on the boat when I think there were refugees on a boat fleeing. And I think I don't remember the situation exactly. What was it? Pirates or they were in danger and there was a possibility of panic. And he recognized if people start panicking, we're all going to die. And there was one old man on the boat who just stayed calm and was smiling. And it worked. Everyone, because of that one, it spread. That is true, man. Fear is so contagious. And I was thinking, I'm not going to keep going on about this, how wonderful it would be if the weather, instead of talking about rain and snow and heat, somehow could quantify fear in various cities, like storms of fear sweeping through Austin, you know what I mean? So that you would be watching the weather and be like, oh, that explains why I'm terrified right now. It's a fear storm is whirling through. It's a fearicane.
Fearicane. We got to pay more attention to that. Yes, to our inner lives is what that says. Absolutely. Yeah. One of the other things in the book, and there's many great, like we talked about Mingyur Rinpoche and Trungpa Rinpoche, some of the great teachers that you and I love and we're very simpatico on. Of course, Ramdas being how we got together. But one of Ramdas's favorite things, and this is in the book, and it's a great panacea for our day-to-day complete imbalance. It's called The Third Patriarch of Zen. Yeah. It's not very long. And by the way, I wanted to tell you, I think I mentioned, or either before or during this podcast, that Love Serve Remember is putting out its first vinyl release, Love Serve Remember Reimagined. Okay, in 1972, Ramdas and I and Ramesh and Parvati and a couple other people put together all of these wonderful radio shows that Ramdas did, answering people's questions. He read the Third Zen Patriarch. There's music. I mean, it was just a wonderful 6-album set. That's where we got the Uncle Henry thing. By the way, I read through that. You were completely negating what I was trying to say. I couldn't believe it. About, Uncle Henry, you know the story. Ramdas put that Love Serve Remember set out for $3.33. And his father said to him, this is awfully cheap. And he said, well, what would you charge Uncle Henry? You did some legal work for him. And he said, well, he's nothing. He's family. And Ram Dass said everybody is family. And then you say, hey, there's a lot of people in families that become completely abusive, using that kind of bullshit
Give me
for
a
their own.
break.
Oh God, there was so we did we remixed some beautiful musicians, Gone Gone Beyond and John Pattern and others, but
Cool.
David Block of Gone Gone Beyond, he put incredible music. You are going to love this because you're a lover of the third patriarch of Zen, and that so you'll be able to pick it up or listen to it on.
Is it only on vinyl?
It's all digital as well. It's digital and vinyl. Yeah, no CD. There's no CDs anymore.
I know, but I mean, if you don't have a record player, geez, you hipster. Not everybody has a record player. Not everyone's an audiophile with special records and nice speakers hanging from the ceiling.
There's a beautiful photo you will love of Neem Karoli Baba that's been that Ramesh took and made into a very psychedelic atmosphere. It's phenomenal. So people are going to buy it just for that. Anyhow, but we talked about this in the book, and we talked a lot about, particularly about preferences. Remember those conversations?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, and
preference.
Yeah. What's the first lines from it? Ye who knows it
the
so
great
well.
way is not difficult for ye who hold no preference.
Yeah. And what does that mean?
It means it's not going to be hell to take your entire family to the airport at 4 a.m. if you don't have preference. You better not.
I'm so sorry for you. Oh, yeah, no, you better not have one tiny little preference. Nothing.
You can't.
I need a cup of coffee. Can you just hang out here with this luggage and kids?
You're not getting coffee. You think you're getting coffee? You're not getting coffee. You're lucky if you get to pee. That's it. But I refer to that all the time. That is one of my go-tos right there for sure. Because preference, it's so interesting, because preference, a lot of people define themselves by their preference. And not realizing that the more preferences you have, the more miserable you're going to be.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've ever been without preference, but it's when you're around somebody who's got a lot of preferences, they're always upset about something because the more you have, that's a lot of plates to spin. Like one of them's you're not going to be getting one of them at least.
Yeah. I'm blown away day to day by these preferences. I mean, one of the things about developing a fairly strong mindfulness practice and is seeing clearly and more honestly, as we've been discussing, the motivations and everything else, and including the preferences. Pushing away, ooh, that's uncomfortable, and bringing in, oh yes, this is good. I'll watch a Golden State Warriors game and get out of it for a couple of hours. Yeah. On the other hand, that's why I love Jack Kornfield's whole thing. You've seen his bit he does. It's interesting being human.
Yeah.
Just look at yourself. You've got, and particularly see you have this orifice in the middle of your face that consumes all of this incredibly varied sustenance. And you watch yourself, watch yourself. Have you ever watched yourself having sex? That's really off the wall. But you know what? He says, and this is the mantra, it's okay to be human. It's okay. And he said, Jack has a particularly beautiful vibration when he's, you really feel he means it. It's okay, everybody, we're okay. It's the same when I first heard Ram Dass talk about all the foibles that he had so honestly. And I felt, okay, if he's got this shit going on, then this horror of dark stuff that's in this head of mine, okay, I can stop thrashing myself to death on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it is, how are you not, you're going to have preference. You are going to have a lot of preference. I would like to be suspended in like an anti-gravity bubble with like windows that I could tint into complete darkness with a perfect soft bed, like the ones they have at the Four Seasons inside, an infinite ketamine drip dripping into my body, big TV, some kind of like massage situation happening, like benzos to like sort of like take the edge off the ketamine. If I want it, I can relax. And some anesthesiologist in the bubble who could appear and sedate me completely anytime I wanted to go to sleep. This with some rigorous exercise routine.
Yeah.
You know, if you follow your preferences, like if you think about like, all right, ideally, what would I like? It's absurd. It's absurd. Like the number of things that you need lined up.
It's extraordinary. It's absolutely extraordinary. Especially like I was in India a year ago. I went back for the first time since the pandemic. You know, I had been going every year forever. And so it's not like I'm not used to India, which is uncompromising. You've been there, you understand that. And I saw the preferences started jumping out. They jumped right out at me like I got to stay at the Imperial Hotel. I mean, you know, it's an upscale Art Deco hotel. Yeah, no, I just need to be okay, you know, for a few days, you know, after flying in and all that. Okay, yeah, I got to get my friend, only him, to drive me. You know, he had a beautiful car. He can drive me up to the Himalaya. Oh, you know, it just went one thing after another. How do I end up in the most comfortable situation that I can possibly
do
have?
that all the time.
Yeah.
Do that all the time. I'm always switching hotels. On the road, I'm always.
Oh, really?
I'll go to a hotel and be like, no, I can't do this. I need 24. Yeah, because I need, you know, I need like, you have no idea. It's a humiliating embarrassment, Raghu.
You know.
But I do think it's important to really know preference, like just what you were saying. Don't beat yourself up because of like your like desire to like have comfort or have a cool hotel room or whatever. It's okay. Like it's that, because that's where you run into real problems is when you start trying to abandon this shit. It's like what Raghu, what Ram Dass would talk about with smoking. He's like, you quit smoking, but all you're thinking about is smoking. Like you know, there is, or what Krishna Das said to me once, which is like, you know, you're going to have to burn off all the karma, right? Like you just, it's got to run its course. And that's true too. Like that's another part of it is you can't prematurely just fake your way into no preference when like stopping something doesn't mean you stopped it when you still want it all the time.
Yeah.
And are thinking about it all the time.
Same thing becoming a monk, you know, and then you're celibate and that's all you're thinking about day in, day out, you know.
Humping.
Yeah.
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 It has to kind of, I think it really does kind of have to naturally fall away. That's what I really loved about Ram Dass, or one of the things is that's a real edgy way of looking at things, you know, and that's a really powerful way of looking at things is you do, this stuff sort of works on its own, I don't know, time frame, you know, and trying to rip yourself away from whatever your particular karmic habits are, it really doesn't work. You're going to come right back eventually.
Yeah. You know who, so one of the chapters in the book is really nicely put together as I kind of have it as something to read. You can see all the divisions of chapters and themes and everything. It's, I have to say our producers, we should give kudos to Ganesh Braymiller and Katrina Fernandez.
Yeah.
Thank you for helping us put this together. But in one section, Duncan and I and Jack and Trudy, who appear in this book, because we did with Ram Dass this wonderful talk, interactive thing. Ram Dass was in Maui. We zoomed him in Los Angeles, something called the Summit. And
oh yeah,
you remember that?
That's
cool.
That's
a long time ago. I mean,
yeah.
That shows just how long we've been doing. So in this thing, I found Jack quoted. You know, Jack has the greatest poems and quotes and so on. I mean, in anything I do, I model myself that way because I love that too, you know. And he read a poem by a man named Mark Nepo, who I don't really know who that is. And it's that speaks about what it means to sit in meditation, quiet your mind, and tend your heart so you can move through the world and be effective, called Adrift. I thought I'd share this. You
Let's
probably
hear
don't
it.
even remember.
I
Everything is
don't.
beautiful, and I am so sad. This is how the heart makes a duet of wonder and grief. The light spraying through the lace of the fern is as delicate as the fibers of memory forming their web around the knot in my throat. The breeze
Yeah,
makes the birds move from branch to branch as this ache makes me look for those I've lost in the next room, in the next song, in the laugh of the next stranger. In the very center, under it all, what we have that no one can take away, and all that we've lost face each other. It is there that I'm adrift, feeling punctured by a holiness that exists inside everything. I am so sad and everything is beautiful.
yeah, that's cool.
Is that a great poem?
Yeah, that's great.
I love that. Yeah, it speaks to the humanness that we are dealing with on a day-to-day basis. Yes, we're human and it's okay. And on the other side of this thing, well, we've been pretty unhappy about a lot of things in our lives, are feeling pretty unbalanced, and really do want to share with people. As Ram Dass, when I said to him just months before he left, I said, why did you not listen to the guru who said, Neem Karoli Baba, do not talk about me in America? But that's all you did. And he said, well, I was given this jewel. I could do nothing but share it with everybody, you know. So that compulsion, right, which is at the root of we all have that. Sometimes with many of us in this world, as we can see by virtue of some of the absolute horror that's going on, it's fairly buried, you know, amidst power and greed and so on and so forth. But it's there, and we need. I'm starting to pontificate. You usually stop me,
I'm not
but
stopping you. I like it.
I just want to say that it does take action when you feel like you want to have this. You have this intention, and you want to make it real, you know, on a day-to-day basis. It requires mindfulness. It requires some practice of moving
Yeah,
away from just the constant flow, the movie of me, you know,
yeah,
and to the movie of we. And so we're pretty much at closing. You got to go on stage here soon, I think.
yeah, I do.
So this is the last quote in the book, and it's
I'm dancing tonight, if you guys are wondering.
oh, are you? I
I'm in
didn't
Salt
know.
Lake City. I'm doing like Chippendale stuff now. Ever since I got off sugar, man, I'm pretty ripped. So turns out
That's
there's a
right.
little more money in exotic dancing than
Yeah, then
stand
there
up.
is some
So
stand-up. Yeah,
kind of
I'm sure
taking a
there.
career change.
So this is from Ram Dass, who quotes Albert Einstein, and this is the essence of everything we hope people will come to, including ourselves. A human being is part of the whole, called by us universe, a part limited in time and space. He experiences himself, his thoughts, and his feelings as something separated from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of his consciousness. This delusion is a prison, restricting us to our personal desires and affection for a few persons nearest us. Our task
Mm.
must be to free ourselves from this prison by widening our circle of compassion, to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature in its beauty. Ram Ram,
Wow, that's
right?
cool.
Albert Einstein.
That's amazing. He really said that?
Well, Ramdas said he said it, so I'm going to believe him. I don't care if he didn't say it. It's the
Whoever
reality.
said it,
Yeah,
it's
is
great.
like,
I'll
yeah.
take that over the theory of relativity any day of the week.
It is the real theory of relativity, I think. Anyhow, we hope everybody does get something of that in this audiobook, The Movie of Me to the Movie of We. And by the way, whenever you're promoting the me, this, you and I, remember to say, go to Movie of Me, because from there you can navigate wherever and you can have samples that you see the story of how we did this and how it came together.
Cool.
So movieofme.com. So everybody,
movieofme.com.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. Everybody, we're happy to be here. And these days, happy to be anywhere, as Keith Richards says. That's my favorite quote from Keith. And we will see you next time on Mindrolling.
See you next time. Thanks for having me on, Raghu.
Yeah, and check out, of course, I don't have to say it, Duncan Trussell, Family Hour.
Yeah, please do. Thank you, Raghu. And also thank you for putting this thing together. You did all the heavy lifting, man. Thank you so much.
I had a lot of help. It was great. And it's been enjoyable. And I'm glad, it just came out, it's a couple of weeks ago. And people are enjoying we're hearing. So that's great.
Great.